Well, hello, everybody. I'm glad you could join us today. I am really excited, and I've said this before, to introduce today's speaker interview. And I've had some amazing speakers on our podcast here, but
And none,
today I want to
none, none
introduce,
of none of them were available today.
but I'm going to introduce one of my favorites, Dean Menudo. And why is he one of my favorites? Because he's made a personal impact on me. He's made me a better person and has also helped me with Vistage, actually. And so, what he's going to talk about today is some brain science and, yes, how to get to yes faster. But it's really all about what I talk about in my LinkedIn and other blogs and things that I'm involved with is helping CEOs and business owners find solutions to problems that keep them up at night. So, with that, I'm going to introduce the award-winning, and I do mean award-winning, in terms of top speaker, top performer awards with Vistage, Dean Menudo. Dean,
Thank you, brother. You,
how
you
you
know,
doing?
you're one of my favorite people in the world, and it's because for both of us, we're doing the same thing. We're here to make a difference, and I always feel full when you talk to me. You trigger the reward system in my brain. You were out in the Michigan area for years. I had a chance to speak for your CEO groups, and then when you moved back east, you sent such a wonderful note to me that the one speaker I most want my groups to hear is you. So when we pay someone a compliment, there's brain science. Their brain releases dopamine. So if people take nothing else away from this session, remember that you can trigger chemical release in people's brains. And there's very simple things you can do. The simplest thing is to pay a compliment. So
That's
thank you.
that's great. So I do have one of the books that I have literally within an arm's length of where I'm sitting. So I'll just flash that up. And it's How to Get to Yes Faster. And so it's way more than just sales. So tell me about how you fit all this into how to get to yes faster. How do you frame that up?
Well, the interesting thing is we know more about the human brain now than we've ever known in human history. And we know that the brain follows a specific process, not only when it makes decisions, but to support the decisions it makes. And if we understand that process and it's predictable, we can help people, ourselves, our family, our clients, our vendors, to say yes, to engage with us faster and more efficiently using less energy. Vistage, and I don't know if everyone who's going to watch this knows Vistage and the promise it makes. But Vistage basically promises three things, and I focus on the center thing. Vistage focuses on helping you become a better leader who makes better decisions and achieves better results. And there's an image that normally I put up on the screen. It's behind me here that I start every presentation I've ever made in the last 24 years, because this was 2000. The image here represents everyone who's listening to this or watching this. The image is the statue which Bobby Carlyle called "Self-Made Man." And
Wow.
it's an image of a person carving themselves out of granite, achieving what they want for themselves, their clients, their families, and doing the hard work. And David, I see Vistage chairs and Vistage speakers as instruments, as tools in people's hands to help them do that. And when I ask, Vistage members, what do you guys think? Pretty awesome. They all go, "That's amazing. What's her name? How do I get one?" And I say, "Well, let me tell you a story. In 2000, when I saw this statue for the first time, I reached out to Bobby. I found her in Colorado. I said, Miss Carlisle, my name's Dino. You don't know me from Adam, but that statue is the coolest thing I've ever seen." And she said, "Dino, that one's 9 feet tall. You can buy it for 87,000." And I said, "It's not that cool, Bobby. It's not that." So we became friends. She sent me this poster and she signed it for me. And I now have a bronze out there. But the point is this: everyone who is here, everyone is trying to be better. And it's a climb. We're all on a climb,
Right.
and
I
that's what you
love it.
guys do. right? Vistage, leaders, decisions, results, stands for ladder and stands for the climb. And I think that's why we're here on this earth, to pursue better together. So that message, pursuing better together, is one that I weave throughout my talk. Now, when I'm with CEOs or their teams, I ask, who do you need to influence? Who specifically? Very often it might be someone in their family, it might be someone on their team, not necessarily a sale. But when we use that word, David, and we've talked about this a lot, you and I, it shuts people down. The word sale shuts people down. So
I
we
get
can go
that.
anywhere you want with that. Yep.
So let me just make a comment on better and better every day, because that is how I live my life. And that is one of the reasons why I'm a Vistage chair today, is to actually be a better person and to learn every single day. And I get the chance to do that. Not only do I get to give, but I get to get. And so that a
Well,
little
that phrase, that mantra, I've actually researched every day in every way. I'm getting better and better. It was first written at the turn of the last century by a French philosopher and pharmacist named Emile Coué. It's considered the most powerful mantra ever written. And I start my sessions and end them with this. Coué found if he gave a patient a prescription and had this phrase written on the prescription and had them read it to themselves 20 times a day, they actually got healthier faster. Okay. So it's really interesting. And there's brain science behind what we focus on. And the math for you and I, when we're working with a CEO group, is really simple. All we got to do is help them improve 1% a day. And if we can do that every day, in 70 days, we're twice as good. So the real value of Vistage is about applying concepts. So I check myself, and you've seen me do this. I've delivered to more than 1,000 Vistage groups now, literally all over the world. But I have two goals in any session. And it's the way I start every day. There's an ancient Latin phrase, utile et dulce, useful and sweet, useful and fun. And I say, let's be useful, let's help each other, and let's make it easy, let's make it fun. And that's sort of the litmus test. So I check myself. There's a tool that you use as a Vistage chair that Vistage has used for maybe 50 years since it was founded, called a personal action summary, where we stop and have people commit what they took and what they're going to apply.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing stuff. A couple of things that I remember and take away from the earliest workshops you've done is you've got some tools that are, you just use these monikers that you just remember. And the back of the napkin. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the back of the napkin tool that you talk a little bit about that can help our viewers here.
Well, wrongly or rightly, most of the coaching that I've done over the years has happened in bars or in the back of restaurants with, whether it's a CEO or a top performing sales rep. I've been on the road with literally thousands of sales reps over the years, documenting best practices. And I know that if I want to pass information or learning on, it needs to be so simple, I can do it on the back of a bar napkin. So I create tools, and one that I just created over the last 5 or 6 years that kind of summarizes everything is additive to the one that you're showing there in my first book. But let's say a person has a bar napkin, okay? And I'll say, I want you to draw a line down the center of the napkin and a line across the middle of the napkin, because I'm going to share with you right now what scientists call the brain's GPS. I'm going to share with you a real simple way to think about how anyone you want to engage with makes decisions. So the important thing to remember is the human brain is the most energy consumptive organ in the body. It's using 25% of the body's energy, constantly firing, and it has only two goals. So what's the first goal, David? What's the brain's first goal?
That's a good question. What is the goal? Pain or pleasure?
So the brain's first goal is survival.
Okay.
So this first line, I have CEOs label with the word gain, and down on the bottom, I would have them write the word loss. The human brain's goal is to stay alive. And so we're always focused on this question, what's in it for me? And you and I were just talking about old Zig Ziglar. I put a little symbol here. Old Zig said, money is not the most important thing, but it is reasonably close to oxygen. And so I say, okay, let's start by thinking about the gain. And then the second thing that the brain focuses on is using as little energy as possible to achieve the first goal, to stay alive. So right here, this line, I would have the CEO write ease and pain. So I call this the brain's GPS. And now, if I put a little smiley face over here, we have 4 quadrants. So if I'm talking with anyone about a person or a team even that they need to get a yes from, I say, let's define what these 4 quadrants are, because human beings want to be in quadrant 1, their highest gain and their easiest things. This is quadrant 1, and you've had Dr. Bill Crawford on, who's
Yes.
one of my heroes and changed my life. And I've told every Vistage group to have him as a speaker. Dr. Bill would call this your highest and best purpose. We want to be quadrant 1. And the quadrant we want to avoid would be here, quadrant 4, the quadrant of pain and loss. So as we start going through this and identifying the factors that are in each of these quadrants, we potentially, if someone or an opportunity is quadrant 4, we have an opportunity to move it to quadrant 2 or quadrant 3. Anyways, this is a coaching tool. And this one is the brain's GPS. The tool that is referenced in the first book I wrote, which you're holding, is called the one-page sales coach. And there's also 4 quadrants, which is a consultative sales model to follow.
Right. Wow. That's simple and easy. And I remembered it because I probably spent a lot of time in the bar, right? Years ago. So, right. So you also have, we don't have a ton of time here, but just an overview on the 7 strategies to get to yes.
There's actually 22 shortcuts that I teach. I now refer to them as the essentials. Okay. So what's one thing that stood out for you that you remembered from any of my talks? What would be an example of one thing that you personally took away?
Actually, the story about how you can frame up a situation and get 2 different reactions. And you know the story I'm talking about.
Sure.
That you tell about your doctor experience. And so when it comes to how do you frame things up to get people comfortable in a situation.
So the concept of framing might be the most important concept in behavioral psychology. And the concept basically says, if you want to make it likely for someone to be influenced by you, you need to create a space where that's more likely to happen. And we do that with both the questions that we ask, we do that with the how we create context in any situation. So that concept of framing is one of, if you were to number every bullet point on this sheet, and here's what the CEOs take when they're done with the session with me. They have a sheet that they've filled out that has 22 specific applications on it. There are, and I have them in the form of questions, but one of those questions is, what do you want someone to feel? And what are you going to give them to feel before that thing? In science, that's called perceptual contrast. And it might be one of the most important concepts that people take from the session. So each of these points, and to be successful as a Vistage speaker, you need to create modules of learning. Because everyone's coming into that room with a different focus. And even though I teach 22 shortcuts, one of them might be the most important to any CEO that day, but another one will be more important to another. So I'll just say that for each of those modules, I have done the research behind them to help explain why those things work based on science, so that my customers can be more effective using them and more effective in their attempts to engage someone, to get participation, collaboration.
Yeah, I think the pieces, as I recall, it's transferring of the emotion, not just the belief. Did I get that right? I think
that's not from my talk, but that sounds good. That sounds good. We might use them in the next talk. You know, the point that you mentioned was something that I actually show in the talk when I walked into Will's Eye Institute for the first time. And I started going blind when I was 17, and I tell that story. But Will's Eye actually saved my vision. Here was the banner hanging outside the elevator when we walked off the elevator. Will's eye, America's first, world's best.
Yeah,
US
yeah.
News and World Report, #1 ranked ophthalmology department in the world. And my friend who came with me that day, we just looked at each other and we both nodded without saying anything. Will's eye was sending a message before we even interacted with anyone that we were in the right place. And that's really important, especially in today's world. You know, this last couple of years have been dramatically painful for just about everyone. People want to know that they're in the right place, dealing with the right people. People don't feel safe this last couple of years. So creating the context with, for example, third-party endorsements, and that sign sends the message that you're in the right place. Go back to the 50s, and I'll do this quick, but the guy who trained Zig Ziglar is also the guy who trained Tommy Hawkins and others, famous sales trainers. His name was J. Douglas Edwards. And J. Douglas Edwards said this, and you and I were talking about Joe Girard, who was in the auto business,
Sure.
but it all goes back to Doug, J. Douglas Edwards. And he said this: if you say it, people doubt it. But if someone says it about you, it's true. And in fact, if they themselves say it about you, it's even more true. So part of effective messaging isn't us saying it. It's creating an environment where those things get said without us having to say it.
Well said. Dean, thanks. Hey, one other question, and then we'll have to sign off. Vistage members. So what makes people, you've spoken to so many Vistage members. So what makes somebody a great candidate for Vistage, by the way?
Well, I think they're lifelong learners like you and I.
Right.
And they're willing to say, you know, I don't know everything. And they also are willing to look around them for help. So human beings are tribal, and one of the most, we get farther when we do things together. It's just as simple as that. You know, I'm of the belief now, Dave, you know, David, the phrase used to be only the strong survive.
Yeah.
Now I'm pretty sure that if 5 or 6 weaklings get together, they're going to survive pretty well. So how do we create an environment where we have other people who want to help us get better and have no ulterior motive, aren't trying to sell us something, just want to get better? There's no school to become a CEO. Well, there is this thing called Vistage, which, you know, is now the leading CEO membership organization in the world and also the largest speakers bureau, you know, more than 3,000 speakers. So if you want to get better, Vistage is a pretty great place to go. And when you're helping someone else get better, you're also helping yourself because you're learning as you're sharing. So
sounds spot on. Hey, if some of our viewers would like to engage with you and learn a little bit more, because you touched on so many great things that you're involved with and can help people achieve, how would somebody get in touch with you?
Well, I'd have them reach out to you. I'd say contact Dave. And you know, because why should I tell them how good I am when you can?
That's what you just talked about. That's that. If the third party says it, then it's true.
Sometimes I get lucky. Yeah,
I love that.
David, thank you. And hey, listen, have them come to a Vistage meeting, you know, and have them experience it. I think it's the best kept secret in America. So
that's awesome. Dean, we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Cheers.